welcome to another FaceHammer Advent show, and we are joined by a very special guest today. So say hello to Laurie Huggit-Wilde and Tom Mawdsley of ETC Team England fame, and
infamy.
Yeah, it depends what team you're from, really, doesn't it? So,
yeah,
I think if you're one of the other nations, we probably are infamous, right? That's the some more than others.
That's the best way, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah,
infamously best sports.
Yeah.
For those that are watching and they don't know who they are, Laurie is the guy that looks like a teacher, and Tom's the guy with the asshole jumper on. So
I think that stands for the Avengers.
Wouldn't it be brilliant if the arrow was pointing at Les at this point?
I can't. I'm in the way, unfortunately.
I don't know which way he's going to be on the thing.
But anyway, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the ETC, AOS, and you can see you got some photos up from last year, 2019, not the last one that should have been, but obviously COVID got in the way.
Should we explain what the ETC is?
Yes,
that's the first question I've got on my list. But
should we do though? Should we just get Laurie and Tom to introduce themselves and say a little bit about who they are? So, Laurie, do you want to go first?
I think it'd be better if we introduce each other.
Oh
no, that's too much power for Tom. Let's not do that.
So hello, my name's Laurie. I'm the Six Nations captain this year. I was meant to captain it 2020 as well as 2021, but of course such was COVID that it didn't happen, which some people are saying was that I was so determined not to be England captain, like it just wasn't meant to be. So there was an international pandemic to stop me captaining England.
Does this technically mean the first Six Nation team, England team that didn't win, was one captain?
Yeah, I mean that is one.
It didn't happen, but you didn't win. So
no.
Also, such as my captaincy, that not a single player under me lost any of their games this year. I mean, I don't think any other captains achieved that.
But they also didn't win.
I'm looking at it a positive way.
Most of the other captains had Les on a team, so
Let's start now.
And then the year before that, 2019, years are getting confusing. 2019 took Daughters of Cain for the team which Tom helped captain with Tony Moore. I went 5-0 with Daughters of Cain at Six Nations when we retained our title there. Played a bit of Age of Sigmar around that and have done moderately well. Beat Les the last time I played him. Beat Byron the last time I played him. Beat Tom the last time I played him. I think that's all we need to say.
How many times have you beaten me, Laurie?
What's that, Russ? I can't hear what you're saying, Russ. Sorry, it's just gone. Mike's gone dodgy. I think I've said everything I need to say.
How was that game at the Masters for you, Laurie? Was that good?
I don't remember that. I don't.
No, I do.
I seem to remember Alariel being fine and everything going well, and my hopes and dreams not.
She totally didn't get one shot by a vampire, right? That definitely didn't happen.
Not on the last dice roll of it as well.
I go to bed thinking about that. Just right on the money. Last down to
whatever gets you there.
Also,
whatever gets you there.
That's why I do it.
I'm just disappointed that out of every time that me and you played, Laurie, the last time we played, for the last year, and you beat me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still one out of what? How many times have I beat you now?
It's the most recent which counts. That's as
good as your last game.
You're only as good as your last game. Yeah.
Well, in that case, I haven't played in a long time, so
I won't mention what I was.
That explains a lot.
I won't mention what I was playing with when Laurie beat me.
yeah. I'm painting the picture in the way which is positive to me. Just accept it.
It's fine, mate. I'd had one shot like one of Tom's opponents, and that was enough to completely fuddle my brain anyway. So
the Tinsdale approach. Blame the shot.
Blame booze.
Can we not talk about Tom beating me in every game we've played as well? Can that be like?
So Tom, how many times have you beaten Les? No, I mean, who are you?
Tom Mawdsley. I played for England Six Nations 2016, 17, 18. So the first 3 years, non-playing coach / vice captain for Six Nations 2019. ETC captain for 2019, ETC defending champion 2020, and it's I think that's how it works, isn't it? Event doesn't happen, we retain.
You forgot the most important award, Thomas.
Oh, it's there. Best sporting.
Yeah.
Best the only team in ETC history, I believe, to win the event and win best sports at the same time, which is unbelievable. Really,
Yeah, I
really.
mean, given the bunch of bloody idiots in this call,
Yeah.
it's a miracle.
So
Darren was
Take
like
a team
the
full of
sports fluffer.
podcasters, and off you go.
yeah,
I think
Uh,
it was mostly my underwear, but I'll
It
concede
was,
that
yeah.
it
I think what that might be one of the pictures that is.
that
in
is one of the
slideshow.
pictures.
Probably
Yeah.
I admitted that budgie smuggler picture because I was thinking,
Oh,
I don't know if that was
Byron-
PC
I mean,
friendly.
Byron would love it.
I don't
but
care.
just in case you get MSI sponsorship later on, you don't want to
Yeah.
get Me Too'd later down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, just getting straight on topic, because there's going to be some people who may not know what the ETC in the Six Nations is. Obviously, there's people who follow us from Twitter and are podcasting, and they've sort of like migrated over to YouTube, and they know what the ETC is because we talk about it on podcasts. But just for people who are new to and will be picking up this video for the first time, like Tom or Laurie, would you like to? I think we do. Tom, can you explain what the ETC is, and then Laurie explain what the Six Nations is, because that seems topical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
That makes
So
complete sense.
ETC acronym is European Team Championship. Was it its roots back in, I believe, 2000 and I don't
5
even
or
remember.
6? It must
Yeah,
be,
something like that. So it existed as an event for teams across Europe to bring together and play Warhammer, World at Wars, 40k, and sort of various other GW games and some other third-party games as well. So
Tanks.
sort of tanks games, yeah.
Flames
It's
of
gone
War.
from strength to strength, so more and more teams every year. It's hosted in a different country each year. Countries bid for the host, much like the World Cup, etc., like that. So the year that I was captain was in Novi Sad in Serbia, absolutely lovely place. And the year this year was supposed to be in Luxembourg. However, that didn't go ahead, so we're under the assumption that we are also in Luxembourg for next year as well. So essentially, it is the World Cup of Warhammer, to put it in a frame. Europeans kind of is there as the start, but now teams from all over the world. So we've had teams from Singapore before. We've got the US teams, Australia, New Zealand, and obviously the European countries as well. All get together, play some games of Warhammer, most importantly, chat, drink, go out for some food together, and just have a lovely week, really.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of work that goes into the prep, because the way team events work is that you basically, each player on the team will play a player on the other team, and then you add the scores together to win the round. And the process to matching people up is bit complicated, but there's a strategy there. So a lot of the prep is what armies you're allowed to take and stuff like that. So there's a lot of rules around, like you can't have like 3 people play in Sinesh, for example, or you've got to have one of each allegiance and things like that.
So each round a country plays a country. Countries have teams of 8 or 6 players for Age of Sigmar, and their teams are paired up against each other in a Swiss system, and then they pair their players off using a system devised in a tournament pack. And then the round is sort of bigger than each individual game. It's a culmination of the results as a whole, where teams win and lose rounds rather than players win and lose games.
Yeah, so it's combined score, isn't it, rather than like a singles game where it's just the one-on-one result.
Yeah, so some people will lose games, but it doesn't matter, because as long as you win as a team, that is all that matters.
And you try and engineer like ETC, and I'm sure like it's the same with Laurie for Six Nations, is that you have sort of like rock, paper, scissors matchups, don't you? And you try and engineer like your rock into the opponent's scissors. So be that a Caradron Overlord 1-drop shooting army into an army with 2 heroes in a hero mission. And you go, right, I 1-drop, I shoot all the heroes, I land on that objective, I auto win. And then you try, that's like, yeah, it is saying it is fun, but it's also sort of very,
that's how it's playing into the strengths and weaknesses of each army. Yeah, it's you play chess. I don't play chess, so this might be a terrible analogy, but you will sacrifice a piece in order to get an advantage in the overall game. Sometimes somebody is that piece. Somebody is the tool.
Hence the term under the bus, and stuff like that.
Although, so without wanting to wax lyrical about that, the under the bus thing is kind of a bit of a trope at this point. There's no such thing as being truly under the bus. You will always have an objective in a game, whether that is to get a point or,
Yeah,
or
it
2
might,
points.
it might just be to get those 2 secondaries, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that gives you...
there is never somebody going into a game without any expectations whatsoever.
Yeah,
If there is,
like
then
it-
you've done it wrong.
That was my
Like
first
it's-
game for the ETC. Was like
Carry on.
our other matchups had gone a bit better, and I was in the one matchup that was bad for me, and Tom was just like, "Well, okay, get what you can," and I was like, "I think that's 2. It might be 3." It's like, well,
yeah,
try, like if you can get 3, great, but don't risk 3 for getting 0. And I just got to a point where I was like 2 is safe, sorry.
Yeah,
but that's
and
fine.
And then sort of without wanting to steal Laurie's thunder, so Six Nations existed previously as a practice event for the ETC, but then has sort of grown to its own thing completely now. So I'll pass that over to Laurie to talk about that.
Good segue.
Yeah, so very nicely set up, Tom. That was very smooth. So Six Nations relies on a lot of the different kind of same concepts that Tom's just talked about there. Same team tournament, same kind of idea of matchups. ETC is 6-player team. Six Nations is 8-player team, so slight differences there. The Six Nations are England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Ireland, and Sweden. And for those of you who are familiar with the Rugby Six Nations, who might be crying out, "Why is it Sweden, not France and Italy?" I believe it's because Sweden just got there first, basically.
So it was
Scandinavia, wasn't it?
So it was France originally in the old times. Essentially the team of the other team was Team Scandinavia in the first year. So it was made up of Swedes, Danes, and a couple of others, and Ben Curry. He's got family out there. I suppose it counts.
That was a first Six
There's
Nations.
a fact check there, I'm sure.
You've seen him now.
None of that. None of that.
He's survived now.
Yeah. So yes.
So there is, and there's been arguments to make it larger than that and have like France or Germany in, but as there's 6 teams and 6 nations, it means that actually you get to play every team. There's 5 games over the weekend. It means that at the end of the weekend, every team has played every other team, which does mean that there's a very nice atmosphere at the Six Nations weekend, and really does mean that it's really good atmosphere, and you also really do know the winner because there's no team who hasn't played another team. And so you really have a very clear winner at the end of it, which obviously last time around was England quite comprehensively in the end, as we got wins against all 5 other nations to at least a great extent. So yeah, it's a bit. I think obviously I didn't go to ETC last year, but I'm sure Tom and the rest of the lads can attest that it's a slightly different feel at Six Nations to ETC because you are all playing each other. You are all English-speaking nations. Even the Swedes speak better English than most of us. Les. And so so as a result of that, there is a real different kind of like you just all chat with each other over the weekend, and it's very competitive and everyone's out to win, but at the same time you are seeing people and having a very good time to boot.
Arguably Six Nations is more competitive than the ETC in some cases.
I think there's more expectation on it, isn't there?
It feels so cutthroat. Like there's a lot of pressure at Six Nations. I think
it's good fun. It's good being with the target on your back, things like that.
Yeah, I mean England should. I think someone said it before, but England should win Six Nations basically every single year because we've got a population bigger than the other load. Well, even an Age of Sigmar playing population bigger than the rest combined. Like so, there's no way that England should not win, but that just makes the other teams all the more determined to get out and beat you, basically. And other teams have got some excellent players in there. Northern Ireland last year pushed us a little bit, and have got some great players. And then Wales have gone for the option of just getting anyone who will play for them. And as a result of that,
you once stopped in a service station and had a shit in Wales? Well, you qualified. You basically that's fine.
Straight
that's
in.
Welsh enough for us. So.
Have you made a sheep joke in your life? You're in.
You're in, yeah.
I actually think the Welsh team was going to be at this year's Six Nations if we'd have attended. Like myself and Byron and Laurie were all on the Six Nations team for 2020. Obviously Laurie the captain. I thought the Welsh team was going to be quite a difficult one. Going into it this year, I thought that it was going to be. I thought we had a really strong team and we were in a strong position to take the event out again. But as Laurie said, because of the amount of players that were on the team. But yeah, I did feel like the Welsh team had really upped,
recruitment.
The recruitment.
they've recruited enough non-Welsh players that they're not terrible anymore. Is basically what you're saying.
Oh, Laurie. So, like,
throw in
such a
shade.
villain.
Laurie said
from
that,
behind
so
the
if you want,
computer, it's fine. Like,
Yeah, I'm not saying that to
agree
Michael's
with this,
face.
can't you?
Like,
No.
but yeah. So I mean, that's essentially what what the ETC and Six Nations is. It's very. I feel like there's quite a strong community on Twitter regarding it, and there is like a group of people that are really into it, and then there's a group of people that don't care. And I think that sometimes the discussions around it can be, they can get heated, can't they? I mean, I know that there's certain shade that was thrown at different people over the years. We won't touch on me. And
it basically all rolled around you, Les. It didn't happen before you
everything
came on board.
was around me.
I'm just saying it's all completely just
no
dragged
one has
down
ever-
in the gutter.
Don't set him up because he's doing it.
he's
He's
trying to-
he's
He's trying to turn the conversation
in.
to it.
I'm not.
So changing the topic.
Yeah. So like, just without getting into me waxing lyrical again, what do you think is the top qualities that a player needs to be like part of the England team? Like, what would you, as captains? Now, obviously, I was part of the selection committee this year because I decided not to apply. Not saying that I would have made the team. I don't think I would have made the team going into 2021. Shut up, Tom. And it's I decided to be part of the selection committee. So like maybe I can sort of chime in with you guys and stuff. But what do you two as captains? Because obviously ultimately you get the deciding vote, don't you, if there's a tie with regards to the selection of the team. What do you think makes a good team tournament player? Do you think it's based purely on rankings? Do you think it's purely on the ability to win tournaments, take strong lists, or do you think it's a combination of all those things?
I mean, I'd say if it was to like three things, it'd be experience, attitude, and skill. Of like a multitude of those sort of things. Like best player in the world with a bad attitude doesn't fit into a team potentially.
You're picking ambassadors, right? Sorry to interrupt at the very beginning, but that's got to be a consideration, right? You're going to go to another country and show people what Warhammer in the United Kingdom, Wales, Ireland, Scandinavia, USA is like. You don't want to take someone who is a bad ambassador for your entire scene, surely.
No, so I'd say like, experience playing team events is key. Proven ability to win games that matter. There's a lot of pressure, especially around ETC games. We could attribute them to to 6 games that are essentially table 1 games of a weekend event. And you're playing those. So most people will play one of those in a weekend, potentially, if they do well. Whereas the ETC team will play 6 of them over the weekend. Not just to win a singles event, but also with people watching and me watching.
Yeah.
And the expectations from people outside of it as well, following from social media and things like that. So that sort of mindset needs to be that, sort of rock solid and with experience of playing those sort of games and winning them.
Yeah, it's, I think that is one of the things that when as part of the selection committee, I tried to comment on that you need to have that. It's also almost the resilience. I think still the most stressful game of Warhammer I've ever played was the Swedish game at ETC. In 2019, just because it was a game that I felt like I was losing, and yourself, Jack, and a couple of other team members, I think Byron was there. They'd all, like, half of the Swedish team had finished their game, half of the English team had finished their games, and it was coming down to who would win the round, and there was a lot of pressure to perform in that situation. I found that it's a very different. It's a different world, I think. Like it's
what you make of it. Some people thrive under it, some people don't.
Sorry, I just disappeared for a second there. But yeah, just to jump on top of that, I think that's why you're really when you're looking at player ability, like winning games is good, but actually what you're really looking for is players who have top 10 or who've basically ideally gone 5-0 at some point in their gaming career, like not because they need to have done that and because there's other qualifying factors as well, but because of that high pressure environment. Like there's no point having a whole load of players who have consistently gone 4-1 or kind of have always managed to just win enough games against okay players in okay situations. You need to have basically won high pressure games, as Thomas said, and like maybe you won't have gone 5-0, but you will have proven yourself able to win on table 3, table 2, table 1, because those are the kind of games which are key. It's not being able to, like, there are some players who are very good at consistently winning games when they should win, but you put them on a high pressure situation and they're not quite so good in that position. You need those players who actually in a pressure situation will be able to just be calm about it and stick to their guns and know their army, basically. So that's why I think player skill, and that's why you that's your starting point, basically. You're not drawing up the top 20 players on bad dice rankings and picking from there, but you're sure as hell going to look at their track record at tournaments when you look at their application.
I think it's a combination of things that I know from my experience when I applied to be on the Old World Warhammer team in 2007, I think it was, and didn't get on that team. Me and Dan Heelan actually applied at the same time. Then we were in the 2008 squad. It's always difficult because you get sort of looked at, and people who've been involved may not necessarily know how you would handle the situation, and until you get the chance to sort of prove what you can do, then you can't really prove what you can do, because the problem with singles events is they're a personal thing, and unless you directly interact with somebody who's involved in that thought process, they don't necessarily know what your temperament or your, because you can look at a result, but the result doesn't tell you the story. And is it the list, is it the matchup, is it was there a thing in the game, was it? And sometimes it's a very tricky thing, because actually where I'm going with this is that the Six Nations sort of been historically is a bit different how it is now, because now that's kind of like a bit more of a proving ground, isn't it, for people that sort of, because I believe there's some rule about being in the Six Nation team to play at the ETC, or, and if you want to comment on that, or
to touch on that a little bit, so when we did the 2019 year, came off the back of that, we had to put a process in place to make sure that team selection was as fair as possible going forward. We were in a situation where the ETC team is a smaller team than the Six Nations, so we figured that using the Six Nations as sort of step one for most players is a great sort of opportunity for them to get involved from that sort of level, play some games, prove themselves, and then be eligible for selection for the ETC proper in the following year. But we were a little bit more open-ended with that. We didn't say it wasn't like a year 1, year 2 process. It was, if you have been a capped player for the Six Nations for the last few years, you're then eligible to apply for the ETC for the following few years. So that it doesn't mean that you play your Six Nations, you have to apply for the ETC that year or you lose your spot. It's sort of an open-ended, and just with a view to growing the pool of players rather than just taking the same team each year, and also making sure that the Six Nations team is representative of the community and is different to the ETC team. It's very easy to take the 6 players for ETC to Six Nations and 2 more players, whereas actually we've got the opportunity, and as Laurie said, we've got a huge selection of players in the country that all deserve to play at that level, that we can use the Six Nations to bring more players in. The issue that we had this year was that the events didn't happen. So what I decided to do off the back of with the older selection committee was to count the events as having happened, so that players who were selected for Six Nations automatically became eligible for next year's ETC. So that it's fair on everybody and not to sort of close, because
the selection process had finished the previous year, so you knew who it made.
We had selected the team.
They would have gone and they would have played, but not unduly penalising. I think it's interesting with a team dynamic, because sort of talking about experience and being on parts of different teams. I think I went to Germany. I was part of the Poland team that come third, and previously it was the award that was, obviously, and I went to Novi Sad before, so I think I did 4 ETCs, I think, something like that. So the one thing that's really important is, like you talk about the pressure and that, and one of the things really important is having a team that is reinforcing positives in a way that you're like, actually, we understand your role is to get those 2 points, so that's just as important as the person who's got to get 20 getting 20.
Yeah, it's
And-
players having that flexibility to be able to switch that role round by round.
And also,
as well.
I think as well, like what's super important is like when you've got like a captain. And I remember when I first went, Marcus was the captain back in the day. Is being able to say to that when the captain comes to you and says like, "What do you think about this?" Is have an opinion on it and not be like, "Well, I don't know, maybe we
Just
should
going to smash it, aren't I?
Well, yeah, because you need to know. You need to know that what you're playing with, and I think it's hard as well because the nature of ETC, you kind of there's a very fluid process where you get moved around on what role, what army, and it's like, is it worth changing to play something that isn't something you're familiar with, or
So,
and there's a whole lead up which can be quite stressful. Actually, I find when I've gone to ETC, the lead up to the event is the worst bit.
Yeah,
because you're like second guessing and trying to work out what you're doing and finding your feet and trying to find that dynamic.
On that selection front, so the first year I applied for the team was 2012. Didn't get in, similar to perhaps some of the people that didn't get in this year. It's like I was doing well, I was playing a lot of events, but I was getting to table 1 and then not winning the event.
Yeah.
And the feedback that I got was, it's you're proving yourself, you're consistent, but you're just consistently under where we want you to be. So I made it my goal the year after to sort of prove that wrong, and that was sort of going into 2013. I applied for the team, and then the January of that year I won the Masters, and I won the Masters because I proved to them that I could play it like a team event. So I took an army, I got really lucky in the first 2 games, and was so far ahead of the pack that I actually lost 3 out of the 4 games after that, but I lost them so small because I played defensively that I still won the event.
Yeah.
And that then sort of when I could show to the selection committee, look, here's my 220 nils because I got up early, and then here's I won the event because I then knew I was far ahead and didn't need to play so aggressively, didn't need to take any risks, things like that. So I played against Dan Thomas, if those may know him from previous, and he beat me 11-9 in an old Degrees of Victory system. But he told me that was he may as well have lost that game big, because he didn't beat me big enough for it to matter, because I was so far ahead of the pack at that point. And those are the sort of things that it's a little bit different in AOS because the Degrees of Victory aren't there as much in singles events, but being able to play different games across an event with the same army and things like that.
Yeah, and if I could comment on that, like it also does make that process of selection a little bit harder because you want to give people a really fair chance. But as you say, to an extent, the easiest way of making decisions is based on players you know, and because you know whether or not they're going to be able to play that team role. So I know Tom talks a lot about Tony being an excellent person to captain, because he can guarantee you certain results. He can look at a result and go, look, I'm going to get 4 points from this, I'm going to get 10 points or whatever. And you know that about a player if you've played with them quite a lot and you kind of know they're on the circuit. But we as a selection committee need to be able to, when we're selecting people, need to be open to selecting people who we don't know, who we haven't played with. And that I think is part of the problem of it, is that you need to kind of be able to, for those players who you've seen that they've got good results, you've heard good things about them, but ultimately you don't know yourself. You've got to kind of work out, all right, is this person who is a known quantity, I know inside out, and I'm a really big fan of, how do I weigh them up against this person who sounds very good and I'm hearing very good things about or seeing very good things about, but ultimately I haven't actually played with? And that I think is where the real tough decisions came from the selection process. Was particularly on the fringes of it, kind of which players do we go for, is what I would say.
I mean, I guess there's also the issue, you might have someone who you think has all the makings of an amazing team player but hasn't done team events, right? That's got to be the other side.
Yeah,
we've been giving feedback to people over the last week or so, and I think that's the most common thing I say. I think I say almost all the time is, like, do more team events. And in part you're limited by that because there's obviously in the past there's been less team events, but over the last year or so, before COVID hit, the Warhammer world were doing loads. We had Brotherhood, we had ones being done down in Crediton as well. Just off the top of my head, I know there's a lot being done, and I think going and doing them is a really important thing, as much for the players as well, because they're very different in feel. Like, I know I'm not going to name any names because I think he is playing for another team, but I know players who say they really don't like team events because they don't like having that control. Like, they don't like being bussed effectively. As Tom says, being bussed is a bit of a poor phrase, but they don't like being chucked into a game where actually their role is to get 4 points. Like,
I love it.
It's something which different characters.
Yeah, I think probably everyone in. I'd be surprised if everyone in this call didn't say that they prefer team events to non-team events. Is that true for all of you guys?
I would
It's
play
like-
nothing but if I had the chance.
Yeah,
Especially,
I agree.
it sounds weird coming from somebody who's opting to go to team events and not playing. But I do.
Yeah.
But I think that says how much he loved them, doesn't it? I think that says that, like, team events are amazing. Like, honestly, if,
They're incredible.
as Les said at the beginning, like, some of you might not have seen much of the tournament scene, and if you can do a team event, do a team event. Like, even if you
It's
come
the
back
best
to the
intro
bottom pack,
to
yeah.
an event. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. For the first couple of team events I did, I captained me and a few of, or not captain, Paul Buckler was a captain, but I did the matchup process. Me, Paul Buckler, Rich Buckler, and Rich Morley down Blood Tithe, one which Mark did down in London in Crawley, and we didn't stand a chance of winning it. Actually, we played your Marauders team, didn't we?
Last round, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, last round, and then the year before we also played. The year before, second
Yeah.
round, you Tony gave Rich Buckler what he calls the worst game of Warhammer he's ever had in his life, which is impressive. But that was
Tom just
that game.
He said that's exactly
That game
what
aside. Yeah, I say, I'm sure Tony loved that.
Right.
But that game aside, it was enormous fun. Like, we were still quite new in the scene, but just like the four of us working together, kind of talking each game. You got someone to feed back to and kind of go back to and kind of go, how you doing? How was that? All right, did you manage to get a couple of points? And like, it's lovely. Normally, and this is because I'm an absolute bastard. Whenever I speak to someone at a
I
singles
know what
match,
you're going to say.
part of my brain is going, I hope they've lost. I hope they've lost. I hope they've lost. Like, talking to my best mates, I'm thinking, I hope they've lost in this singles game, because if they're losing, that's better for me. But in a team game, like, it's nice to talk to people and be able to go, I really actually want them to win this. I genuinely want them to win.
It's nice to care about it, isn't it? Because a lot often you go up to somebody, like, I'll go to Les and say, how'd your game go? But really, I don't care. All I want to do is tell him how my game went. Actually, if we're on a team, we both care about each other's.
Yeah, a vested interest. I'd really encourage anyone who wants to go to a team event but doesn't have their own group of people they can go with. It's really common for events to specifically ask for one or two people to come and join this, one or two people or three people, or someone needs a helper. Do not shy away from that. You couldn't find. I mean, they literally have a vested interest in being nice to you. We've just covered that. It is an amazing situation to just dump yourself in.
I remember you doing one, Byron, back in 8th edition with a Dane, an Aussie, and a German.
Yeah, this is the one that you won, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one
That's where Spunk Bucket was coined, I believe.
Yeah. You were the. Yeah, that's what they said.
There's your ad money gone right away.
I remember the one game. We went into there's one round, and I had a super hard matchup against like a completely tooled up Daughters of Cain list or something like that. I went in it. It was the one game that I absolutely smashed, and I played it perfectly. I turned around and told them, it doesn't matter.
We already won. Yeah. I do find that because we've played a few of the team events as the FACEHAMMER team during the Wild West that we were quite successful with, and it's a good feeling. I think one of the good things with team events, especially like you get, especially like when you get some of the players that been around the block a bit more, you get access to people who know their stuff to like almost coach you a little bit before the games and stuff, where you can talk about a game and go, oh well, I think this, and then someone who plays the army that you're against and maybe knows your army as well will say, well, actually, if it was me, I would actually really like that matchup from the other side of the table, and because of XYZ, you go, I didn't really think about that. And then you're like, oh, right, and I know that, like, having people like, like your Jacks and your Toms, and that's why Tom's great as a captain, because he plays a lot of different armies, and he knows pretty much a lot about all the different matchups, so you can almost get coached through,
It's like playing Warhammer by committee, but you've still got to play the game yourself.
Yeah.
So you can have, like, in most events, there is no sort of coaching midway through a round or anything like that. So it's not like, for those who haven't done team events before, it's not once your game's finished, you can't stand by your mate and tell him what to do and things like that. There is an element of individual responsibility in the games, but you've got that pre-game to sort of hash out tactics, and you'll be divvying up tertiary missions and things like that, and that's your opportunity to tell each player what their expectations are and what if I've got any advice for how to to achieve them, that's not really going to change dependent on how the opponent plays. I could do that early on as well.
It's good when
Yeah.
you've got
You
the
do quite
debrief
often. You
at
have
the end as well, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
after the game and you sort of can reflect on those things. I'm trying to remember a specific example, but I believe there was one. I think it was the Daughters of Cain with Slanesh at the ETC, and like I specifically took in the Slanesh army, I took ways to shut down command abilities. And I played against a Daughters of Cain army, and it was the first time I'd actually played the matchup, and I managed to lose that game by a few small margins. And then afterwards, I kind of thought about it, and then the next round, I had two Daughters players on the bounce, and then I absolutely smashed them because I'd learned from that. And ideally, it would have been better to do that before the event, but it is what it is.
Well, no, but this is one of the things where I think we did well in that, without being awful, you had a weakness going into it. You didn't have many practice games with the army and things like that. So actually, if you find your groove with it and it fits with the team's pairings, why would we not give you the army you're comfortable playing against? It's often as well, if you think you'll win the matchup and they think you'll win the matchup and you're right, you've not only have you won the game you've paired into, you've often won at least one other game that they've bought to try and get that pairing for them as well.
Yeah.
So, it's that's the really the really interesting part of it is the game before the game in the pairings process and deciding who plays who. And a lot of teams often will go with they'll find the top 6 armies and they'll just play those. But then often if you've got one, I always call it silver bullet, then actually if you can then Byron, if you can present that to an opposing team, obviously people get the lists well in advance, so they do know that it's there. It's not a surprise on the day, but it just throws their game plan off because they're expecting to pair against armies A through F. Did my quick alphabet
That's
on
good
my hands
work.
there.
That's good work.
And
You've got 6 fingers, doesn't it? There.
and if you bring Z instead of F, but Z's really good against the rest of them, then it's really interesting. And I think that was one of the things that gave us the edge in 2019.
I think it's important.
And there's that balance, isn't there? When you're writing lists for teams, there's that balance between what you call teams lists, which are ones which just have a real weakness in them, like you'd never take to a singles event. But in a team event, are brilliant because you can just match them into certain scenarios, or you can match them away from certain armies. But you can't. I don't think you can have 6 or 8 teams lists. You also need some which you can.
You just need some solid army.
Some solid armies, which are just good armies, which you can put into those different matchups.
We had the Daughters of Cain. We had
Skaven.
Yes, that was it.
Those were the two, weren't they?
Skaven. They were the 2 mainstays that you could back to win any game.
Mainstay. The shout out to the old rule.
Yep. And then you had like silver bullets, and you've got some armies that will do well in certain scenarios. And you basically you force them into.
It's almost like
Go on, Les.
You build a team in it where you go, I need my tank, I need my stuff that's just going to sit there, safe as houses, bank the result. I can give that to probably the weakest player and coach him. No, I'm kidding. You get the anvil.
Don't start talking about WoW then. I was going to fall asleep. You start saying tank. I was going to wait. You start saying
you need your scalpel. You need like your No, but it is you do, in a team. You need those like those armies that can kind of be. Use a more traditional tournament, which are kind of good in different situations. Then you can have the hyper specialized ones, and you can also have like the super defensive that are good in like 8 out of 12 missions, but you can always pair them into those missions, so you just know that objectives, a solid bank, isn't it?
Like
objectives have really changed the game now, haven't they? Sorry, Tom. Objectives they weren't a thing before. It was just this army is going up against one of these 2 armies. Which do we want to play or whatever? But now you could pick an army against another army, and this could be like that could be its kryptonite on the other side of the table. But as Les used the example already, put it in a hero mission. It's a 1-drop, and it can get stuff there that can survive for 3 turns probably. You're still good at that point, even if you are literally against the worst matchup in the game for you, which, if anything, has just made it far more complex.
A good example of that was at last Six Nations. I was playing against Team Wales, and I've had a complete mind blank. Alex Bruce, there you go. Alex Bruce was playing against me, and he'd put me down as a green. because he fancied he's playing a mixed order list and he fancied his chance against Daughters of Cain, except for it was Arcane Places of Power, Duality of Death, and I had Marathi in the Realm of Life, who had 13 wounds. So yeah, I first turn and transformed her. I moved her onto the objective, and I went, all right, so I've won, haven't I? He went, yeah, you have. And then he started shouting at his captain, and of course that's where the captaincy kind of it's not quite as simple as it first seems, I guess, captaincy, because you've not got just the same scenario being played in every single set. You've not even got the same realm being played often in every single one. Like there are also other elements to it, and like Tom was Team Wales doing the matchup with their captain, and he'd done well to an extent. He'd matched Alex into me, which was a green for Alex, but just not on that scenario.
Yeah, so like for ETC, we paired. Teams will generally get a spreadsheet together. They'll get an idea of sort of is Army A good against Army B, etc., etc. And for my team for ETC, I specifically told them to leave scenarios out of the equation because there are just too many variables then. And if you give me a sheet that has every army, every scenario that could possibly play that round, I'm not going to
learn it.
No. So, then it gives you some data to go off, but then you need to use a little bit of intuition then to say, because you're not allowed to talk to the players during the pairings, that actually that green might be an orange in that scenario and things like that. And that's sort of just being able to interpret the spreadsheet rather than blindly following it.
Yeah, for sure. Very good point.
And then you've got that flexibility, isn't it? So you can you lean on the player's experience in detail at the time.
Yeah, we had a game plan going into everything. I can talk about it now because it's a year and a half ago. That there was one army that we knew exactly where we were going to place it every round. Didn't matter what the opponents did. If this army goes first in this scenario, and that was Les's Fire Slayers. Yeah. We had Byron's Silver Bullet, ridiculous command point spam Bone Splitters army that often we just threw up first because it's just sort of that puts them on the back foot. They've got a weird decision to make super early. And Byron's army will win any game that it should win for the most part. Yeah. So, the only times that we didn't put Byron's army up first is if Byron had 2 red matchups. Because Byron's army would also lose 99% of the games that it would probably lose. Yeah. Like it was so binary. There was no wiggle room. So, we had those two going into it. Tony was often the sort of the sacrificial lamb with the Archon Flesh Eater Courts army. And then we just had the two solid picks in Jack and Darren that often we would put down together. Just like pick your poison.
Yeah, and I think
and then you're still left with the solid one at the end, then, aren't you?
Yeah, that formula was pretty much the same for every round.
And I think you get there's that whole layer of strategy in there, and I think one of the interesting things when you do the matchup is, like you say, when you put Byron's army up first, the other team has got to decide how do I've got so many options to pick, whereas if you left him last, they've only got 2 left, so they don't have to make a choice.
Yeah.
So there's more opportunity for them to make a bad choice because the army's something they don't know, they haven't played before at a singles event. So that's one of the things I remember when we come third in Poland, one of the armies I took, and I trialled it at the Danish event, which was the warm-up event that used to happen over there that I know some of the players have been to before. We went there, and basically I took a Tomb King army with 2 Necrosphinxes, and they were like, "What is this? Like, this is back in the day, but it was just so weird." And when I went to Poland, it performed really well because nobody knew how to deal with it because they'd never played against it. So it's just just so weird. I mean, I remember the German captain was scouting the games during the Ashes because he was trying to figure it out, and he played with it and not done very well with it, and he was like, "I don't understand it. I can't make head or tail of this." Yeah. But I think I was one of the top scorers with that list in that event, and it was just a solid army, but it was so weird. It was such a weird army for people to plan for,
Yeah. Often what happened when we put Byron's army first is they'd put 2 matchups that Byron would win because they'd rather just know they've lost. They'd rather know they've lost a game.
Yeah.
But then that actually gave us a chance to look at the spreadsheet and pick the one army that's worse for the rest of the people on the team.
Yeah.
So not only have we bought a win, we've also taken away one of the armies that other people didn't want to play.
Yeah. Yeah, and
it's
nice.
You win 2 games on 1 then.
Yeah, it's nice to feel ahead as well. Sorry, but it's a lot of what we've had in in team event, like feeling that you're ahead, or
Points
feeling
on the board.
something in the bag, anything in the bag, 4 points. They're still in the bag. You know you've got them. You know you lost that game. You know you won that game. It's one of the reasons why sometimes it's nice to have some fast armies, but I don't think people should.
Yeah, so I had a
it too much.
laminated sheet every round that I was tallying up the points on, so that I could tell everybody, look, we've already got 40 points from 2 games. So in order to win the round, so we went on the assumption that we win the event by winning every round by a little bit. Rather than going out of our way to win rounds big, which could potentially cost us by taking risks, we took the safer approach to try and secure the event in 6 rounds rather than 5. And it happened that we won the rounds fairly big anyway. But having that and just being able to say to everybody, okay, so 2 games have finished early that we've paired for, that we've won, but actually now there's 4 of you that you need to win 2.5 games between you.
Yeah, because that's worth noting for those of you who haven't played team events before. You might think, I think I first thought before I played a team event, that a lot of the wins would be like you've gone 6-0 or 7-1 or whatever, but you don't. Like you're never going to be. It doesn't matter how much of a genius you are as a captain or as a team. Like you rarely, particularly in international team events, you're rarely defeating the opposition team 6-0 or 8-0. You're far more likely to get a 6-2 or a 5-1 or even a 4-2, and like that's how you win, by consistently doing that, by consistently just getting a win on the table. And that updating your captain is quite a funny one as well. I don't know if you remember, Tom, but final game of Six Nations for me, I was playing a Skaven player as my Daughters of Cain and thought I was doing really well, and you came across and said, how you looking? I was like, yeah, major victory I think here, and then came back 20 minutes later. I was like, yeah, he's just rolled a double 6 on his bell and has got a free Vermin Lord, and then you have to update again and be like, yeah, I'm not so sure now. And it's that thing of kind of the captain needs things like that. Your captain needs to be kept into a running commentary on, because then Tom might walk across to Russ, and Russ might be like, yeah, I think I can push for a major victory here, but I might give up the it might be binary at that point. I might either get a win or a loss. Yeah. And if you know that someone else is going badly, then they might need to push for that, basically.
Yeah, so you've potentially got a safe 14 or a risky 20.
Yeah.
So often you'd want the safe 14. However, that might be the case that if something goes bad at the last minute, that it can be. I think it was there was the first year of the AOS Six Nations, so 2016, I think it was, that I think we paired Scotland. Scotland had come out really, really good, and I think we won the round 81-79. So literally the games went 4-4, and it was a single secondary mission that won us the round. And often that's still as good a result than as winning 7 out of 8 games.
Yeah, it's just sort of like touching on this subject. Laurie's brought this up, and I wanted to sort of like ask both of you this. So for those of you that don't know, Laurie has spoken quite a lot about playing Daughters of Cain at Six Nations. Laurie, other than playing Daughters of Cain at Six Nations, you've never played Daughters of Cain in a competitive sense, really, have you? Other than practice games, you've never taken them. You're not known as a Daughters of Cain player.
No. I'd actually taken them to 2 tournaments about a year and a half previously, but taken them with 20 snakes and Calebron, and I was taken to Six Nations.
So never played
completely different list.
Yeah,
exactly. I never played actual Daughters of Cain.
It's, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, so Laurie's known, for those of you that are new and don't know who Laurie is, Laurie's known for playing primarily a Sylvaneth army, right? Yeah, that's like people would say, if you had to pick an army that Laurie plays, Sylvaneth. How important
is that variant on Richie McCally's Sylvaneth?
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah, before that was a variant.
I'm pretty sure Richie taught him everything he knew.
I thought I taught Laurie everything he knew when we taught him how to play. But it's I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, how important do you think it is for people to just stick to their one army? Because like Laurie's taken Sylvaneth to Six Nations. I know I took Iden after that Six Nations. I know I took Sylvaneth to the first Six Nations. I took Stormcast to the others. And I took Fireslayers to ETC. Do you think that you need to get a wider understanding, I think, of armies out there rather than
It's different for each player. It's so of the people that we've got in Six Nations and ETC this year, there are some players that we know we're going to have to give an army to fairly early, and there are some players that we know we can give an army to fairly late. Like, I'm terrible for playing the same army. I don't take the same army more than once, for the most part, but I prefer that. I'd rather pick up an army and be 95% with it than play an army for a year and be 98%.
Yeah, you're like the
More
polar
fun.
opposite.
I'm very
of what
similar
I am, right?
to that.
Yeah. So it's different for each player. Those with a bit more experience that have played a wider range of armies are better at picking up newer armies as well.
Yeah.
Often they've played with what they're playing against.
Yeah.
Which is good.
I think it's also what you're asking them to pick up, like, because I played quite well at Six Nations. I went 5-0, but at the same time, I was playing with probably the strongest, along with Skaven, probably the strongest army out there at that point. So it wasn't as if Tony and Tom were giving me like a really niche army and kind of going, yeah, go away, learn this game. And like, I think I played with that Daughters of Cain list maybe 5 times before that weekend, and it was strong enough that I knew that I could just play as long as I played well, then it basically would have my back. So you're going to want to know your players, and there's some players who you probably couldn't do that with because they do need to know an army inside out and need to just play it like yourself, Les, who I know you feel you need to get those reps in basically.
Or they have a style.
It's it's like for me, I need to be able to, and I spoke to Russ about it before, and I'm not sure if we've even covered it on a podcast. I need to play an army enough so that when I'm at the table, I don't think. I just react and do stuff at the table. I need to know. I don't need to think about rules. I don't need to think about war scrolls. I need to know everything. That's Holy Within. That's this. This is the order I do things in. So that then when I approach the game, I then play the person. I don't think about my rules and how that responds. I have to just understand everything that I do to the sort of like subconscious level, so I can then react. And that only comes from playing a lot of games. Like, I did before ETC I played, I think it was 79 games I played, going back through the Fireslayer book. So between Six Nations and ETC I played 79 games, which is how many months between that?
Not a lot.
That's
I don't know.
3,
not a lot, is it?
I would want to kill myself playing that many games.
Yeah, I think you should get out more, lads, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You need a hobby, mate.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like it's different for different people, and I guess like for people out there that are like maybe touching on this and you've never heard of this before, so it's not just a case of pick one army and get really good with it. Sometimes you need to play different armies, but ultimately it's just a case of being out there and playing the games. I mean, we've touched on the Six Nations this year, and we touched on ETC, and we know actually covered who's actually in the team. So it'd be nice to maybe like call out the people. So like, Laurie, do you want to like who actually made the Six Nations team this year? I'll put you on the spot now. See if you can.
Yeah,
remember.
you really have. Let's see, because it's been 45 minutes since I was thinking about it. So the Six Nations team this year, and it's a lot of new blood because a lot of the old players have stepped down. Give myself time here to think about the players by procrastinating. So we've got this year we've got Darren, Steve Curtis, JP Stevens from up to north.
Just play
Benjamin Sava.
Yeah.
And I'm immediately running out because I've been put on the pressure. I've only got halfway through the team. Ricky Me from down in the south. Then
Terry,
we've got
off of podcast fame.
Terry off of the very podcast I'm on. And then we've also got
two more
here.
Dun, dun, dun. Who made the
Who
team?
else have we got? Tom?
Luke and Dan.
Luke and Dan, of course. How can I forget Luke and Dan? They're both from the ETC team as well, yeah. And then Luke Morton and Dan Bradshaw as well. And so of those players, people who've actually been to a Six Nations tournament before, I think we've got Darren and that might in fact be
Terry has played.
Terry wasn't capped last time around, but Terry has played before. So because we had a whole lot of players who stepped down, actually we've got a relatively new bunch of players, but they are all very good players. They've all played more than one team tournament, and very confident with them. They're a good bunch of lads, and I think they'll do well. And it's a real interesting mix there because we've got some players who, as I say, are very experienced and have played a lot of games, and I think we'll be able to, like, Darren is renowned. Darren basically could pick up any army and play it a few weeks before an event, and we'll come up with some kind of filth. If it's a wanky, fruity, filthy, janky army, then Darren's great with that.
If it fits in a carrier bag, it's fine.
Yeah. Ideally, with one or two legends in there, ideally, quite like something which you know.
Only buy from a car boot sale in 2004.
in the Pompey area. But if that's Darren's list, then Darren will just beat everyone with it. But and then you've got other players who do like to specialize in certain areas. Steve Curtis is very happy to admit that he's like you, Les, and that he needs those reps in. Basically, he needs to play an army a lot, and so I think we've got a really nice mix there. And I think that's reflective. I wouldn't want a team of well, I would want a team of Darrens, but to an extent, I wouldn't want a team of Darrens because you want some kind of locked in. And then similarly, in the nicest way possible to Steve, I wouldn't want a team of Steves either because you need some people who are going to be flexible and going to adapt as the meta might shift a little bit in the months coming up to it.
So I'm
Tom,
trying to
who's the ETC team?
Who's the ETC team?
You've only got 6 people to remember.
James Tinsdale, Richie McCallie, Luke Morton, Dan Bradshaw, Tony Moore, Darren Watson.
It's almost like
that's because I've been waiting for about 10 minutes while you were thinking of yours. And yeah, I've only got 6 players to remember.
Well, I'd say,
I've been trying to just think of a team of 8 Darren Watsons then,
that'd be
all with their shirts off and Element Game stickers on their nipples. Like,
that would be it would be carnage. I think Luxembourg wouldn't know what it's getting itself into.
Half of them would get there.
Yeah. That's the problem. It's like who's going to herd them into position.
Who's going to be Dad?
So,
who's going to be leaving his passport?
No, we love you, Darren. Anyway, I think we've been talking quite a long time, so I just thought before we sign off, I just want to ask you guys if you've got any advice, like one piece of advice for anyone who's interested in playing for the team in the following years to build themselves up. Well, obviously, I'd say the first step is to apply and see what the feedback is. But how would you, if you were going to say somebody who's never applied or put their name in the hat or anything, what would be your piece of advice? So I'll put Laurie on the spot again. So Laurie, what would you say to a aspiring player for Team England in the future?
So yeah, first of all, as you say, Russ, apply it. And the reason why you apply it is because it means that the next tournament season, we're going to pay attention to you basically. Like we will know your name because there's a lot of people who play team tournaments, and if you apply, we're going to be looking out and seeing your name and being like, oh yeah, they applied for England last year. Alongside that, and we've mentioned it a couple of times already, get involved in team tournaments. Just start playing in team tournaments. They're such a different kettle of fish from the normal one. And you'll play one and you might take your normal army list, which you just play week in, week out, and you'll be like, oh, that was a good experience. And then if you play another one, you'll be like, right, I now get this. I understand that I can actually I don't need that redundancy I've got. Like you might take something which kind of gives you half a chance against a shooting army, but actually might be like, I don't need to take that anymore. Like we're not gonna match me into shooting armies. I don't need any kind of redundancy there. And you just learn that nature of it. And you learn that list building for team tournaments is different from normal ones. And if you can, try to captain a team if you can, possibly, because the matching process, which we've described briefly today, is absolutely enormous fun. Like that whole process, the game within the game is, I get excited, I get a bit jittery, but at the same time, I absolutely love it and back myself to do a good job of it. Sorry, there's like 3 things there, Russ.
Sorry.
Just before you go to Tom, how would somebody that doesn't, obviously we're assuming people know that a lot of this is on Twitter. Have you got like an England application, sort of like the form normally gets tweeted out as a Google Doc from Twitter? Is there like an England website? Is there a specific place they can go? And like, I mean, I don't know if that's a Tom question. You can maybe touch on that before he goes with his things, Laurie, or I don't know if you can.
It is a Tom question. We've got a very sophisticated website that Tom set up, which gets a huge amount of use, right, Tom?
So I can say that a website exists.
Okay.
It has a link to the selection charter.
Yeah.
And that's it. Forums are outdated. Like it existed solely as a place to house applications, so that we had a private selection committee area on there that we could post the applications. Mainly because I wasn't tech savvy enough to realize I could just give everyone access to the Google document. So at this point, it really does just house the link to the selection charter, which sort of outlines the process for selecting the team and selecting the captain. So obviously, me and Laurie won't be captains forever. There will be different captains who will have their own slight spin on it, but the charter there outlines the specifics and the sort of the ethos around the team selection and what we want to try and build. So in terms of like prospective players, I'd say as much as this may sound a little bit nepotistic, is get known. So talk to the people who you see either playing for the team or on the selection committee and things like that. Obviously do some team events, do well at some events as well. That's one of the big things, is just to make sure that that you can play well, that you can play under pressure. So having some good singles results and some team experience is great. So yeah, just get out there, play some Warhammer, play some different armies, get an idea of the game rather than a specific army.
And I would say as well, if you're really interested in, like, you're already a tournament player and you're like, the people, trying to arrange some games with people that are part of the team or part of the process, because then they get to know more about, or even if that's just for coaching to get you ready.
Yeah.
What I would say, you mentioned Twitter, so is it at England AOS? Is that what's the
At
handle?
England AOS 1, because somehow England AOS was taken.
Okay, so and then obviously the website,
I think it's Mick Wendell.
If you give us the link, we'll put it in the show notes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's. I think as well, like we've talked a lot about playing at team events and stuff here and team tournaments. What I'd say as well is that if you're interested and you've never been to any sort of like any tournament, any Age of Sigmar tournament, any Warhammer tournament, I know there's a lot of like this stigma attached to it, which is like the win at all costs, and it's not like that at all. It's
the exact opposite.
It's like I know like I'd say like Russ and Byron are two of my best mates. Like Tom's one of my closest friends. I've known Laurie like for about 4 years. I wouldn't say that we're like besties, but like I do respect Laurie a lot as a person, and I only know these guys through tournaments. And it's like the greatest.
Is that your teeth grinding? I can hear.
Yeah, fuck
Make it
no. But yeah, it's like
I've got an erection.
Is get to tournaments, like go to like a war, even if it's just a Warhammer World when they do 3 a year, don't they? What they used to go to the ones at Warhammer World if you can, if you're based in the UK. There's lots of stuff, online. I don't know if there's any sort of like Reddit stuff if you're in a different part of the world. I know we get like a lot of views from America and stuff like that. It's
another thing as well, like the world's evolved a little bit a lot more people are playing online tabletop simulator. I
especially
really
now.
wanted. Yeah, exactly. So that's going to open up avenues for people to play games with people far away more often.
Yeah.
They're not as valuable as actual games with actual models, but do you know what? They're better than not playing.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And that does link to Les's point. Like Les saying that if you can play one of us, then do. And I'm always happy to play someone at TTS. Always looking for a game at TTS. And if you do live up in Newcastle or somewhere like that, or down in Cornwall, and you think, I'm never going to be able to play one of these people in person, then drop us a message on Twitter or via Discord or whatever, and say, can I play at TTS? And happily will, and that'll be a way of you kind of going, look, this is what I like to play, this is my play style, and just it does increase your chances, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. That's actually a really good idea. We could do on the FaceHammer Discord. We could do a TTS game arranging
hookup.
Yeah, like a TTS hookup site on our Discord
channel. It's fine.
Add a channel.
We've got public voice channels in there if people want to join those and talk while they're playing games as well.
Laurie's I'm out.
Laurie's done that. He's just gone to go on. He's just down to work on his only TTS.
He's got to play a game.
So it's like only fans, but for Warhammer TTS. So he's gonna just get his ad ready. So
we let him jump back in before we sign off. But we've just slated you massively, Laurie, whilst you've been off. I'm sure you've heard.
Standard. It wouldn't be a FaceHammer episode without you slagging me off, to be honest with you. So
we know you love it. That's fine.
You love it.
I just like it when they talk about me. If it's good,
I know. This is the only one that he's going to watch. So if basically, guys, like that's the end of this Advent show. Cool. If you like what we've done here, please like and subscribe and do the comments below. It really helps us sort of engage with you all. Hit the bell notification. We give you updates as to when the stuff's coming out. Please join the Discord if you want to. We do. Even I respond on it occasionally. Russ does more.
Really
than
I do. I occasionally look at it.
Join this Discord. You might get to talk to Les Martin.
Our viewers are nicer and better than Les as a person, so they're on that.
And Les does spell his name with a Z on Discord, which caused me some real personal pain to see that. Oof.
It's better than what Tom changed it to when I joined our hobby Discord that we've got. Because generally Tom just
I can't remember what it was. It was probably hilarious though.
I'm sure it was. But anyway,
massively offensive.
Well, thanks for coming on, guys. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having us. And
it's
a good idea that you're doing this Advent thing. It's good. Get more content out there.
If anyone has any comments or questions for the guys, you can drop them below, and we can forward those on and put responses.
And
I'll put the
I'm also in the Discord as well. At Tom Mawdsley on the Discord. If you've got any questions, just hit me up.
Yeah, likewise.
Perfect. Thank you very much, chaps.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.